All right, welcome to another edition of This Would Make a Great Movie. I'm your host, Andre Hextall, and guess what? It is election season, and I'm not sure if you guys have figured out who you're going to be voting for, but let me ask this question. Which one of these hot issues is so important to you that it's going to help you determine who the next president of the United States is going to be? And then let me ask you this person that you're going to be voting for the next president of the United States, is he or she actually capable of solving all of the issues plaguing this country? Well, let me tell you what this story is about. It's about a senator who, in a time when America has kind of gone in the wrong direction, comes up with an idea that finds a president who is actually capable of solving all of America's problems. So, my idea for what would make a great movie is called The President. And here we go. Despite being the coldest inauguration day on record, President Stanford takes his oath of office and begins his second term as Commander-in-Chief in front of the largest audience ever assembled in Washington, D.C. It's Monday, January 21st, 2041, and millions of excited Americans now stand at the steps of the Capitol building just to get a glimpse of the most powerful president in U.S. history. He is highly intelligent, very analytical, and known to be fair. All traits that have helped him to balance the budget, nearly erase unemployment, and reform the educational system in just 4 short years. As the president begins speaking to the audience, Senator Ware, the man directly responsible for getting him elected, looks out over the sea of people and smiles proudly. He is locked in on the president's every word and can't help but cheer along with the crowd as the second-term leader delivers his new dream for America. It was a day of redemption, one the senator put his career on the line for when he conceived an android to run for the president of the United States. By the end of the 2028 election season, the dream that built the United States of America was dissipating. Hope was giving way to cynicism, and values were dying under political corruption. More than 90% of the population was in a financial pitfall, and lack of confidence in either presidential candidate kept most Americans from the polls. At the country's darkest hour, Senator Ware, the leader of the most popular political party, introduced a revolutionary plan for developing an android candidate to run in the next election. He was convinced that a robot whose mind was designed to look at problems purely from an analytical perspective could save the country from falling apart. Gaining support for the idea was tough, but eventually, the senator successfully lobbied the other members of his party to back his program. Once the plan was approved, the senator hired the best minds in the United States to develop the technology for the artificial life form. When the prototype was ready, he made sure to test it extensively to be sure no personal agendas would ever interfere with its decision-making. When the senator was pleased with the test results, he brought the unit online and introduced it to the public as their party's nominee for president. As expected, President Stanford's inaugural speech inspires the crowd, and the millions in attendance applaud at the conclusion of every point. Again, the senator is moved by their response, but finds himself distracted when the president makes a sudden announcement. Later that day, the president would be revealing his plan for fixing the remaining issues still plaguing the country. This catches the senator off guard, who was surprised he wasn't consulted as usual. So later, after the congressional luncheon, Senator Ware approaches the president and requests a private meeting. When the president curiously wants to know why, a confused Senator Ware insists they review what the president is planning to say. Surprisingly, the android pauses and even seems somewhat hesitant, but eventually agrees to meet with the senator after the inaugural parade. The human opponent, who ran against the android in the first election, was simply outclassed and unable to compete with the swift intellectual mind of a computer. During every debate, the robot displayed its superior ability to analyze a question and offer swift solutions. The country responded, and on November 6, 2040, President William F. Sanford became the first non-human president of the United States. Within days of taking over, the president introduced a cutting-edge algorithm to control the U.S. finances, which eventually balanced the budget. Then, working closely with Senator Ware, He got Congress to agree to a work-for-all plan to lower unemployment and mandated a national curriculum for reforming the educational system. By the end of his first term, the android was already being celebrated as the best president in history, and Senator Ware was being praised for helping to save the country. When it was time for re-election, the oppositional party was unable to produce a viable candidate to challenge the android. It was also clear the entire country wanted the president to address plaguing issues like abortion rights, terrorism, and immigration. Knowing this, a confident Senator Ware successfully convinced Congress to grant the president emergency powers, which would allow the pair to more aggressively take on these issues. By mid-afternoon, the post-inaugural parade begins, but the overwhelming adoration for the android causes the event to go late into the evening. Unfortunately, by the time they reach the White House, the president has no time to meet before his announcement, so reluctantly, the senator sits in the audience of the press room, where he is forced to learn about the president's plans with the rest of the country. A few minutes later, the president takes to the podium and reports to the nation that he has devised a solution for dealing with terrorism, immigration, and abortion rights. He then shares that he called into service the National Guard and put the U.S. Armed Forces on full alert to help enforce his plan. Then, the extremely intelligent, rational, and stoic android concludes his inauguration day by telling the country about his new America. First, to combat terrorism and to rid the country of illegal immigrants, the National Guard will be going door to door searching homes to screen out illegal immigrants and anyone deemed to be a threat to the United States. Once these individuals have been identified, they will immediately be arrested, deported, or executed as enemies of the state. Furthermore, all U.S. citizens, along with anyone wishing to enter the country, will henceforth be required to submit a DNA sample, which will be used to build a traceable profile for the FBI. To prevent unwanted pregnancies and to put an end to abortions, all women with a probability for having children will submit to a process which will remove their eggs. These eggs will be stored at a secure facility until it can be proven that the would-be parents are properly prepared to have children. Finally, President Sanford warns that anyone refusing to comply with these mandates would immediately be arrested and subject to federal prosecution. Quickly, there is a frenzy of questions from the reporters in the room, but as usual, the android is able to brilliantly back his decisions with logic and with data. A stunned Senator Ware watches as the president leaves the press conference, and when the commander-in-chief is out of sight, he scrambles down the hall to find a television. As he watches the top news stations feverishly debate over whether or not the android president has gone too far, he looks out the window and sees a crowd of protesters assembling outside the White House lawn. When it was clear there would be backlash, Senator Ware heads to confront his creation and to implore for the president to take a different course of action. But when he enters the Oval Office, the president is already in the process of moving forward with his plans and discussing next steps with his military leaders. After a few awkward moments, President Stanford invites Senator Ware to join the meeting, but there is an obvious hesitation. At the same time, the National Guard engages the protesters outside. The senator makes up an excuse to leave so he can begin planning to retake control of the country before it was too late. As he turns to walk out, the president calmly asks if the senator is still with him. When the senator declines the president's offer, the android pauses and reminds the senator to submit his DNA sample before leaving the White House. Alright, so that is my idea for what would make a great movie. And hopefully after listening to that, you'll agree, based on the times, the fact that we're right in the middle of election season, a movie like this could be very impactful. But anyway, let's talk about the fantasy cast and who do we see playing Senator Ware, and also my vision of how we would handle the android in this movie. And then we'll finish up with who I see as the director for this as well. All right, so let's start off with what I think is the easiest pick, and that's the person that I see playing Senator Ware. I am very excited about the potential for Russell Crowe to play that role. And for those of you who do not know who Russell Crowe is, Russell Crowe played in my favorite movie, Gladiator. He's also been in A Beautiful Mind. And I know he's in a lot of movies, and I can sit here all day and go on and on. But bottom line, I believe that Russell Crowe would be perfect for this role because if you take the persona that he has in The Gladiator, and I'm talking about that defiant but still articulate type of strong hero type person, and then combine it with the current age of Russell Crowe, and I'm talking about like Russell Crowe in Noah, that type of older, slightly overweight Russell Crowe, then if you're able to do that and envision that, then you see Senator Ware the same way I do, which is a very strong leader who potentially could be president himself, but instead is someone who's chosen to go with an idea that he feels so strongly about that it ends up changing the country forever. And so for that reason, and because he's also one of my favorite actors of all time, I'm going to pick Russell Crowe to play Senator Ware. All right, so let's talk about the android character for this movie. And one of the reasons why I wanted to wait to talk about this is because I want to describe the scene first of how I think we would reveal who would be playing this role. Let's first go to the future. And remember, it's Inauguration Day. It's very cold, but there are still millions of people that are standing around waiting to hear the president speak. So if you can see that, then the way I see this scene working is you would have Russell Crowe standing somewhere behind the president, so you're only able to see the president from Russell Crowe's perspective, which would be the back of his head. And so as the president's being sworn in, you see his hand go down on the Bible, and of course he's wearing a glove. And then he starts his speech, "I do solemnly swear to execute the office of the president," etc., etc. And then the crowd cheers, and then he takes the podium and he begins his speech. And as he begins to speak, you get the sense that this is a very popular president. But you can't really quite make out what he's saying because of all the cheering. But Russell Crowe is listening intently because he's trying to pick up on every word and you don't quite know why. Then toward the end of the speech, you hear the president say loudly or clearly that he's going to be making a surprise announcement this evening that he's found a way to solve all of the rest of the problems plaguing the country. So now he has your attention. But then the camera pans over to Russell Crowe and you see that he's not happy. There's something about what the president just said that rubbed Russell Crowe's character the wrong way. So now you're looking like, oh my God, like what's happening? Then as the president goes to take his seat, he turns around and you see this faceless android. Now I'm going to hang on that for a second because I see that being key to how you introduce this movie and also the character, because once you do that, then the person watching this movie will realize that they're about to go on a serious ride. And so for that reason, I want the character or the person playing the android to be just that, an android or some kind of computer generated character that will make you want to pay attention to why is this computer now running the country. So for my pick to play the President of the United States, I'm going with none other than an actual android character. To direct this movie, I'm going to go with Ridley Scott. And there's no reason for me to even try and sell this through because everybody knows who Ridley Scott is. To me, he's the father of modern day sci-fi movies. And the reason why I say that is because of Blade Runner. To me, if it wasn't for Blade Runner, there would not have been those types of effects movies that are now dominating all the movies that are in the theaters these days. So if you're going to go with something that's kind of cutting edge like this, a sci-fi movie that's going to involve an android president, then you're going to have a visionary who can take that and capture the essence of what it would look like in the future and what type of situation the United States would be in that would allow for a character or a type of president to come to fruition in those times. A lot of people didn't like Prometheus. And I got to be honest, there were some things about the movie I don't know if I still quite understand. But gosh, you got to agree that visually that movie was stunning. And then if you take some of the other work that Ridley Scott has done, Aliens, gosh, I can go on and on. He always is able to emotionally and visually pull you into the movie. And for that reason, to make a movie that I'm hoping would be as impactful as this one would be, you have to go with none other than Ridley Scott as director. All right, so that wraps it up for another show. I sincerely hope you enjoyed The President and actually think that it would make a great movie.